και όχι μόνο φαντασίας, αλλά και των κόμιξ, με θρυλικά franchise και κάποια σχετικά γνωστά. Κάτι Star Wars, Star Trek, Batman, δεν πιστεύω να έχετε διαβάσει τέτοια πράγματα, δεν σας πω εγώ για τον κόσμο. Αλλά είναι υπερλατρεμένες ιστορίες με Star Wars Kenobi, Batman Resurrection, Star Wars The Old Republic και φυσικά και δικές του ιστορίες που έχουν αγαπηθεί από το κοινό αυτόν τον κόσμο και είναι πάλι μεγάλη στιγμή που είναι εδώ πέρα. John Jackson Miller, it's great to have you here.
Wonderful. This is the first month I've actually left the United States. I did a very brief Star Wars event in France 2 weeks ago. Went right back home and came right back here. So this is my first actual convention, and I'm glad to do it. Thank you for having me here.
It's an honor. It's an honor, and we are very glad to do so. I'm going to ask some questions to get the conversation kicking, and then we'll switch to questions from the audience, if that's okay. Okay. Kenobi, for us, remains one of the most beloved Star Wars novels, especially for recent years. What drew you to tell a quieter, more internal story in such a loud, action-packed universe?
The novel was actually originally going to be a comic book. It was originally going to be a graphic novel that I was going to do for the 30th anniversary of Star Wars in 2007. And the more I wrote the story, the plot, the longer it got, and the more it looked like it would never fit in a comic book. And so I put the story on the shelf, as they say. I did not write it. But the opportunity came later to write the novel itself. And it is a very different kind of Star Wars story. There are no lightsaber fights. There are no space battles. It is about Obi-Wan Kenobi's first month on Tatooine. It is a Western, as they say. Some would say it is a Western romance. He is the mysterious stranger who wanders into the desert, the man with a past, and he's trying to escape. And he has to stop reacting to things as a Jedi and start reacting to things as a hermit, as a crazy old man. And so the novel is, as I say, very different. We were taking a big chance with it, but it has since sold hundreds of thousands of copies around the world in many languages. And I am delighted that the TV show, both Ellen McGregor read it, and so did the director of the show. They took one of the major ideas from the book. They did not do anything to erase or overwrite the book, so the book still happened in my world. Although that's not that important necessarily, but it is nice that it is intact.
So that's good to hear. You're a very character-driven writer. Your character development often stands out, especially in very vast worlds that may be a bit more difficult to navigate through because of their complexities, their layers, their history. How do you strike a balance between writing recognizable icons like Obi-Wan or Revan or Star Wars characters and giving them fresh emotional arcs in these vast worlds?
I treat Star Wars or Star Trek or Batman or whatever I'm writing as I don't know what the word is in Greek, but we have in America we have national parks. We have places that are natural preserves that are set aside, that are protected, that you may not destroy, you may not do anything to. And I treat Star Wars the same way. That when I'm offered the chance to write Star Wars, my role is not to get my fingerprints on everything and leave my footprints everywhere and change everything. The goal for me is to take the toys in the toy box, take the tools that are there, and tell an interesting story, something that people hopefully will feels like Star Wars, but does not just tell the same story over and over and over again. And then when I am done, I have to put everything back where I got it. I have to, if I were camping in a national park or a national forest, I would have to take out all of my garbage. I would have to take everything. I'm not there to leave things lying around. And this is true for whatever kind of writing you do in somebody else's world. You know, if I had gone to the people at Star Wars and I had said, hey, I have a great idea. Luke and Leia, they're not twins, they're triplets. There's a third kid out there, and let me tell you about him. They would have said, no, that is inappropriate, that is too much to do, that is messing too much with our world.
And Batman Resurrection and even more recent Batman Revolution are set between the 1999 film of Batman Returns of Batman. What inspired you to explore this specific period in Gotham history?
Well, I saw Batman, the Tim Burton movie, in the theater 12 times.
12 times?
It was a very slow summer. Batman, the Tim Burton movie, was very, very important in comic book history. Comic books fans in the United States always felt persecuted, always felt embarrassed to be reading comics for many years. In the 1950s, they tried to ban comic books because they said that they were bad for children. When Batman did appear on television in the 1960s, he was a very silly character. And that was the picture that had stayed in most people's minds. The comics fans knew better because we were reading Frank Miller, we were reading Alan Moore, we were reading The Dark Knight Returns, we were reading The Killing Joke and these stories like this. But the general public did not know anything about this. And so many of the fans were terrified when they announced the Batman movie in 1989, especially because Tim Burton was known as a comedy director. He was known for Beetlejuice. He was known for something called Pee-wee's Big Adventure, silly movies. And Batman was cast, they cast Michael Keaton, who also was a comedic actor, a comic actor. The thing is, they had both done serious things too, and people did not remember that. When this movie hit, when they did the first trailer, they did not have the name of the movie in the I don't know, trailer in the preview. They did not have the name of the movie in the trailer. They just had the logo. This logo was the most famous image in the United States and probably the world that year. And people put it on everything. And it changed the way, because it was a serious movie, it changed the way that people saw comics. When the film ended, because I was writing, I went that night because I was reviewing it for my college newspaper. And in my review, I said that the film had just redeemed comics in the popular culture. It had just told people that you can do comic book stories that are more serious, and in movies. And it led to movies like The Rocketeer, like The Crow, various other films like that in the 90s. And even though the Batman films themselves got silly again, they went back the other direction, and we later got the MCU. We could look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So when they gave me the opportunity to write a story that was set between, or to write a story, I said, yes, I want to write a novel that is set between the films, between Batman and Batman Returns, where we see what happens to some of the other characters like Vicky Vale and Alexander Knox, and then characters like Max Schreck and Selena Kyle, who will become Catwoman. What are they doing in this period where Batman is just starting to work after the Joker is gone? And the first book was so successful that the sequel has been announced for the 28th of October and I found out just this morning that Warner Brothers has approved the manuscript.
Oh, that's great
so,
news.
Yeah, so I'm something off of my mind.
That's so good to hear. I'm sure. Knights of the Old Republic is filled with political tension, moral ambiguity, and shifting loyalties. Was it important for you to mirror real-world dynamics in a galaxy far, far away?
What I wanted to do with Knights of the Old Republic, it is set 7 years, a comic series I wrote for 5 years. It is set 7 years before the video game. And you don't have to have played the video game to enjoy it or understand it. It is about a young Jedi student who is the worst Jedi Padawan ever. He's terrible at everything, and he's sure he's not going to become a Jedi. And then he walks in on a terrible murder that is then pinned on him. They blame on him. So he becomes a fugitive. And the only people who will help him are the con artists, the criminals, the scoundrels that he used to have to chase. He has to try to escape the Republic, escape the Jedi, but also find out why things happen and clear his name. And at the same time, the Mandalorian Wars are happening, so a whole lot of stuff is going on. This is a rare comic series in the sense that I wrote every single issue. So we actually have it in the giant omnibus, 1,344 pages. I wrote every one. And then we have just just volume 1 of 3 as well. This is a wonderful thing that we've been able to have the story in print for 20 years almost.
It's still a very good starting point for Star Wars comics. It's actually the first comic when somebody asks me which Star Wars comic to read.
Yeah.
That's not said it has not been explored in the movies. For me, it's the go-to Star Wars comic, and I'm very glad it's still in print and as legends now. And you guys, you should read it for you.
Yeah, it is. It benefits from the fact that it has a beginning, middle, and end. A comic book you have to make changes to as time goes on because things happen. But all of the things that I planned to do in the book, we did.
But writing from a Sith point of view can be tricky. What did you find compelling or surprising about diving into that mindset? Into the Sith, writing from a Sith point of view.
Writing Sith. I've got a book called Lost Tribe of the Sith, which all of these things, by the way, are available both down over in the bookstore area, but also upstairs. We have this, and we have the Batmans as well that you can buy. The Lost Tribe of the Sith is a group of Sith soldiers who crash on a planet, and they are forced to survive without killing each other for centuries. This is a group of stories that tracks the rise and fall of their society because Sith do not form civilizations. They do not get along. And so, in order to survive, the Sith had to actually create sort of laws. They had to become lawful evil in a Dungeons and Dragons sense. They had to actually figure out a way to regulate ambition. Otherwise, they would all kill each other. And so this is the challenge that faced them. And so in the Lost Tribe of the Sith book, that is the approach. Writing evil characters can be taxing, if you have to be writing them forever. I wrote a novel for the Emperor from the Mirror Universe in Star Trek for the Michelle Yeoh character, Emperor Georgiou. And by the end of that year, I wanted to take a bath. because the character was always conniving, always thinking, always plotting, always insulting people, always, and it's a very fun book, and one of the book. But again, it can be exhausting to be in that mindset.
In The Living Force, Qui-Gon Jinn challenges the Council's increasing isolation.
Yes.
How does his perspective influence the narrative, and what commentary were you aiming to provide on the Jedi Order's role in the galaxy?
Ah, yes. My latest Star Wars novel came out last year, is The Living Force. We got one copy at my table and one copy downstairs. And it takes place 1 year before The Phantom Menace. And they said, we'd like you to write a Jedi Council novel. And I said, all right, I would like to have Qui-Gon Jinn walk into the council chamber and say, when was the last time you people actually helped someone? When was the last time you left this room? When was the last time you did something? You sit in this room, you debate things, you tell the future, you don't let anybody but Yoda and Mace Windu talk. There's all these other characters that you see but you never hear. And why don't you get out and find what's going on? The slang expression in America is touch grass. Get out and find out what's happening, because for all they know, there could be a senator of the Republic who's plotting to take over. They would have no idea. And so Mace Windu accepts the challenge, and so they take a road trip. They go to an island planet that they had saved in the High Republic era, but has now gone down the tubes. And so it is the story of their visit to a world of islands. And we actually have a map in the book itself, and then we did a bigger map that is available in some editions. And you can follow all the members of the Jedi Council, including characters like Sazy Tin and Adi Gallia and Uriel Poof and Apo Ramsesis, these various characters that you saw but never heard. And it is a very fun book. I mean, we have a challenge that they face, but I think the more interesting thing is seeing these people all in action. Every one of them gets significant time together.
That sounds so good. And you only have one copy, or
yeah, we're down to one copy of Living Force upstairs and then one downstairs. But anything you get downstairs, bring upstairs.
Okay, sounds good. We can move to questions from the microphone. We can move to questions from the audience if you guys have any questions. Yes. Let's begin.
Hello there. Hello there. I love the Kenobi book. It was very good. One of the first books I read with over 300 pages. My question is, if there was a DC and Star Wars crossover, which characters would you choose?
A DC and Star Wars crossover.
A DC Star Wars crossover. One of the interesting things about Star Wars is that George Lucas said in the very beginning that he would never do crossovers between different franchises. There have been Star Trek X-Men stories, the official ones. There have been all sorts of other crossovers. The only time you ever see anything slightly like a crossover in Star Wars, it will be if it's like Lego, which is not real. So, the question would be, who's stronger, Superman or a Jedi? I don't know. The Superman is the two things Superman cannot defeat are kryptonite and magic. Well, the Force is magic, so maybe that is it. I don't know. It's an interesting question. It is not something I ever really explored or thought about. This is an interesting thing. People always ask me, well, you write in all these other people's worlds, you must have done a lot of fan fiction. I never did any fan fiction. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that people did it. And when I drew my own comics, it was my own characters, in part because I was such a poor artist that I knew that anybody who saw my characters would not recognize Batman, would not recognize Iron Man, would not recognize anybody like that. And also, I was a little capitalist, and I wanted to be able to sell my comics one day. But no, it's not something that I really thought a lot about. I thought more about combinations between Marvel and DC, Superman versus Thor or something like that. I haven't really thought so much with Star Wars. One of the things about Star Wars is when I started working on it, they said that the Jedi are the only superpowered characters. Nobody else. If somebody is particularly strong like Chewbacca, it is because he is naturally strong. But there are no super strong characters that have gotten their powers any other ways. They have since then added cyborgs and various other things. But in general, in Star Wars, if you're either a regular person or you're a Jedi.
Thank you.
I also want to ask sort of a crossover question about, although I haven't read Kenobi yet, but from what I know about the character, and I really want to read your book about him, would you say in a Star Wars and Star Trek crossover, what crossover exactly, like, do you think maybe Obi-Wan and Rios from Star Trek are kind of similar to
And who in Star Trek?
Rios.
Rios, okay.
They're both hermits, they both have to leave their...
Yes. People often ask which Star Wars novels of mine I would recommend to my Star Trek fans and vice versa. And I think that some of my books rhyme. Obi-Wan, I actually think of my other novels that I've done in Star Trek. It's most similar to the book I mentioned called Die Standing, which is Emperor Georgiou, where she was the emperor of the mirror universe, and she's a refugee having to start completely over and has to decide, do I still be that person, or do I try to actually become someone new? That is very similar to this, although of course she is evil and he is good. Rios actually feels to me closer to Kanan in my New Dawn novel. Because I don't have it here, although it is downstairs, upstairs, we have that upstairs. So my New Dawn novel, which we didn't mention, that's my Rebels prequel. That is the thing that I wrote. It's also the first novel in sort of the Disney era of books. And that book is about sort of the opposite of what happens to Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan knows what Order 66 was. He knows who the Sith are. He knows what happened. And he knows what his responsibility is. He knows he has to save or protect Luke Skywalker. Kanan has no idea what Order 66 was. He has no idea who the Sith, or the Emperor is Sith. He has no idea what he should be doing with his life. And so he drinks. He crawls into the bottle. He takes dangerous jobs. That is very similar to Rios. Because Rios, from the Star Trek Picard series, I joke about him. I say that he's the Star Wars equivalent, rather the Star Trek equivalent of Han Solo, because because he's a freighter pilot, but he also drinks more, he smokes more, and he has a more active social life. But the way I look at it is that he also has no direction. He has nothing guiding him. And in New Dawn, Kanan finds something to guide him when he meets Hera. And in Picard, it is when he meets Picard that his life changes.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Next question. We can do both, so let's go first with you, and then we more to the front.
Hello.
Yes.
In the movies Batman and Batman Returns from Tim Burton, we never saw a Robin. So in your book, what would an ideal Robin look like?
Okay. They were originally going to put a Robin in the first movie, and then there was no room. They were originally going to put a Robin in the second movie, but he wouldn't have looked much like the Robin that you know. He would have been a mechanic who helps fix the Batmobile, and there were issues with the actor, and they just pulled it because there wasn't room again. And they went a completely different direction when they got a new director. The other thing that DC has been doing, and it really kind of set us up to be able to do our books, is DC has done 2 graphic novels called Batman '89. And in those stories, you get to see the character that they would have developed as Robin, because those stories take place after Batman Returns. In Batman Resurrection, you do get to see that character, although he is not Robin, and so you get to see that character. We decided to create sort of a loose continuity between ourselves and the comics, because the comics are written by Sam Hamm, who is he was the scripter of Batman, and we wanted to do that. And what's been fun about it is the artist for those comics has been doing illustrations for our novel. So at my table, for example, well, our villain is Clayface, or what we think Clayface would have looked like in a Tim Burton movie. And so we have a painting at our table, or an image of it, his impression of what, or our impression of what Clayface would have looked like. So yes, I do not involve Robin, but we would have used a Robin consistent probably with what they intended to do, which is the character that you see in the comics.
Great. Next question, please. What else?
Hello. Yes. It's Kέντρο to meet you. I was hoping for this maybe one day we go to yesterday to the con and I was here. 10 minutes from my house, but for me.
Well, I have it here.
New Dawn was my first time to the Would there ever be a sequel to a New Dawn?
A sequel to a New Dawn. Yes, there's a TV series called Rebels. The thing with New Dawn, I wrote that book before the show even aired. It came out a month before the show aired. Vanessa Marshall, who is the voice of Hera, and on my website, at my table, I have bookmarks with my website, farawaypress.com on it. On the New Dawn page, there's actually a link to Vanessa Marshall doing a reading of one of the Hera chapters, and that's wonderful. Likewise, on the Kenobi page, there's a link to James Arnold Taylor doing a reading for one of the Kenobi chapters of the Kenobi novel. But Vanessa said she said, I really enjoyed reading the novel. You really captured my voice, and I'm like, I hadn't heard your voice yet. This was only due to the good work of me and working with the Lucasfilm Story Group and Dave Filoni and the other producers of the series. They gave me so much information, I felt like I knew her. But when they gave me the opportunity to write that story, there were 4 or 5 different possibilities I could have done. I could have done a story with Chopper, or I could have done a story with some of the other characters later, after they had met, or with Ezra in some way, shape, or form. And what I had told them, and this is a lesson that I learned from Knights of the Old Republic, I said, let me be as far away from possible from the stories you're going to tell, so I don't collide with you. So there are very few entanglements, very few confusion points, because they change things in the show. And so I was reluctant to immediately go back in and ask to do another one, because I knew that it was a moving target. It's like when there's an actual show going, it's like a train. And I can drive my car alongside the train for a while, but every so often it might cross the tracks in front of me, and I have to be very careful not to do that. So this is a problem in all franchises. If you're doing something that is based on active story. It was easy to do Living Force because it was set a year before Phantom Menace and nothing was new that was coming there that I was going to collide with. It was easy to do this, except that I needed to know what they were doing in the comics. It was very easy to do this because the video game was already done, but I also had to be careful about what they might do in a third video game. So, and so I always look for places that are safe to work in. With Star Trek, with the streaming series, we actually have a nice situation because one of the novelists works on the TV shows, and so every phone call, or every novel I do for Picard or Discovery or for Strange New Worlds starts with a phone call to Kirsten Beyer, who is an executive producer, and she says, okay, here's something you can do that will not collide with or be erased by anything we're going to do.
Thanks very much. My second question is, during the Nights of the Old Republic,
You can do it too. You can do both. Okay.
you did the crossover story Vector with 4 titles, I think. It spans between the 10,000 years before to 400 years in the future. How was working on such a project to crossover between history to the argument?
Okay, what he's asking about is we did a crossover in the comics, all the Star Wars comics in 2008. We crossed them all over in a series called Vector, or storyline called Vector. And the idea was that I would have a character in Knights of the Old Republic who would leap 4,000 years into the future, appear in the Star Wars Dark Times comics with Darth Vader, would leap ahead again to the Rebellion comics with Luke Skywalker, and then would leap ahead again 100 years to the Legacy comics. And this was trouble because there is no time travel in Star Wars. So we had this debate and discuss. It took a year, but to actually settle on a plan. And I was the biggest problem because we put the storyline in the middle of the series that we were doing. The idea was to do like everybody else does in a comic book crossover, and usually those crossovers land in the middle of a story that you're already telling. And so I had to stop my story about Zane trying to clear his name and deal with this artifact that was being sought by the Jedi. But we worked it all together, and so in fact what it did was it caused me to change the order of the plot elements. The order in which Zane works to clear his name got changed because of the fact that we did it. So again, it was not easy. I did not have a lot of fun on that year, but it did help sales on the series, which is what they wanted.
Thank you. Next question. Έχουμε 1, 2, 3 questions. We have time for 3 questions because I saw 3 hands.
Okay.
You wanted to ask a question? Then to Leia and then back.
That's it. Hello, sir. Something that I have been asking myself about, and now I have a chance to ask you, is this. The stories that involve Batman are often known for being tough and gritty and perhaps somewhat bloody. Maybe the ones that I have read will be able to them, but my question is this. When you write a Batman story, do you prefer making him as realistic as possible, or do you prefer making him someone that borders on the superhuman, even though in universe he's supposed to be immortal?
Yeah.
Mortal. And do you believe this changes when he's alone compared to when he's with the rest of the Justice League?
Batman is different depending on which decade he comes from. Batman in the 1930s carried a gun. Batman in the he killed all the vampires on Earth. Batman in the 1940s gets Robin the sidekick. Batman in the 60s is very silly. Batman in the 70s is a more serious detective. Batman in the 80s is grim and gritty, the Frank Miller, the violent version. And it evolves over time. And it is the job of whoever is writing it to match whatever is the mood that they're doing. The Tim Burton movies were matching Batman in the 30s. and the early 40s, where it was darker, it was somewhat grittier. Some characters die in that movie, and there are no superpowers as opposed to the later Joel Schumacher movies. Nobody's reading anybody's minds. There's nothing like that. And so I get into a lot of the mechanical things about, because it's a novel and not a comic book, I have room to discuss things like how the Batarang works, how various gadgets of his work. I get to deal with issues of how does he deal with the fact that Bruce Wayne might be here, and the danger might be here, and the Batmobile is way over here in the cave. How does he deal with these things? How does he get home without being seen? Mobility, traveling places is a problem. How does he deal with the fact that the suit just doesn't look scary during the day? It doesn't look scary in daylight. This is a problem they found when they were making the movie. And so we engage with these things in this story. And so yes, I had to research, after having been in Star Wars and Star Trek, I had to research how a lot of things on Earth work. And it made for some interesting internet searches, because I had to find out how bodies decompose and all sorts of things that you would need to know in a mystery story, but you would never need to know in Star Wars or Star Trek.
Thank you. Next question. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you for being here.
Sure.
I'm really interested in your take on Star Wars, because I feel like your books not only take characters out of their comfort zones, but take them so far out of their comfort zones that you kind of force them to crack open.
Yep.
And I think that goes what you like to plan. So I wanted to ask what your process is when you do something like that, and if there are any other characters you would love to crack open.
One of the things that I've tended to do is, most of my stories have been about Jedi who are alone or cut off from the Jedi Order and have to make their own decisions completely apart from the structure of the Order. I very much think that the Jedi Order is often the problem, and that when Jedi get together, good things do not always happen. Every so often there's a war, and I become concerned about these things. And so in Knights of the Old Republic, we have Zane, who is a fugitive from the Jedi. Knight Errant, we have Kara Holt, who is the only Jedi willing to work in Sith space. Kenobi, obviously, he's a Jedi alone. Kanan, he's a Jedi alone. Lost Tribe of the Sith has a lone Jedi in it. And all of it is mirroring, all of it is recalling the most famous lone Jedi of all, and that is Luke Skywalker, because he also has to make a decision at the time. And this is one of the reasons why when I did episode 8, I did a book for that is not here called Canto Bight, and when people said, "Oh no, he would never quit the Jedi Order," well, he has a pretty good idea after he's read all the history that the Jedi Order is sometimes the problem. So this is why it was kind of interesting getting this book to look at the 12 different points of view that the others have about the Jedi and sort of get in and see them defend themselves a little bit. And so I found that was a different thing for me, and I found that was interesting. The only characters I really haven't written have been Han Solo and Lando Calrissian, and I feel like I did my Han Solo novel in Star Trek Rogue Elements. Again, a completely different thing. But again, there's always a chance.
Thank you very much. Next question.
which authors have influenced your work? And the second one is, have any elements of your novels inspired and influenced the way stories from other universes have been inspired?
Okay.
Something from Batman, Star Wars.
Okay. Yeah. Authors outside of comics, outside of novels, Arthur C. Clarke was one of my favorite authors. Inside comics and inside Star Wars, a man named Archie Goodwin wrote most of the early Star Wars comic books. Those were wonderful. So I think I do a lot of writing to myself when I was 12 years old, and trying to come up with things that would have interested me. As far as things that I have done in one franchise that have influenced something in another, generally we try not to do that. I try to not actually accidentally put a phaser in Star Wars or a lightsaber in Star Trek if I can help it. Although that has accidentally happened a number of times, not necessarily using me. The elevators, known as turbo lifts, appeared in Star Wars under that name. Those were stolen from Star Trek. But not by me. I tried to eliminate that. Every so often I will come up with an element that I will bridge from one to the next, or something like that. Again, a funny thing in Rogue Elements, which is the Star Trek novel with Rios, is he's flying on a spaceship full of junk, and one of the artifacts on there we actually see in Knights of the Old Republic in one of the issues. It's a Sith artifact that just happens to be on a Star Trek ship, and I don't say exactly that's what it is because I'm not allowed to do that. But if you have read both, you can read between the lines and you realize that's what it is. We try not to do too much of that because they frown on it. It's lawyers.
All right, guys, thank you so much.
I will be here all weekend upstairs at the table right as you go in, just in front of Deanna Troy.
Marina Cities.
And actually, I have my Troy novel is there too. It's a book called Takedown. Any books that you get from our table or buy from our table, the autographs are free.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much. It was an honor. Thank you, guys.
Get a bookmark at the table as well.